What's up, guys? Michael from Halfway back with a brand new video, and today I want to do something a little different. I want to do a little music talk because one of my favorite artists, Childish Gambino, just dropped a new album last Sunday, and it's called Atavista. Except it's not really a new album, it's a re-release of his 2020 album, 31520. So if you don't know like the backstory behind this new Atavista album, basically Gambino dropped an album back in 2020 called 31520, and it didn't really get the attention I think that he thinks it deserved because it came out during a really weird time. I think there was a pandemic or something going on. On top of that, there were just a lot of weird choices with the album that I think alienated a lot of people. There wasn't any album artwork for it. There weren't any track names. They just had timestamps. A lot of the songs transitioned into each other, but it kind of just made the songs very bloated because they would have these very long outros. And it seemed like it just didn't really connect with people. So now that Gambino is promoting his final album coming out this summer, he decided to go back and release an updated version of that album, and it is now called Atavista. So since the album came out on Sunday, there's been a lot of discussion about which version is better. Is 31520 better? Is Atavista better? And it seems like people are kind of just mixed in general. It seems like if you hadn't really listened to the album before, you like Atavista more. But if you listen to 31520 when it came out and you have that connection with it, you probably like that version of the album more. And I gotta say, as the resident Childish Gambino expert on the internet, I think I fall somewhere in the middle. I think both versions of this album have positives and negatives, and it's kind of hard to decide which one is necessarily better. I feel like it's very subjective, and it's just kind of when you started listening to it, that's probably the version that you're gonna like more. For me personally, I loved 31520 when it came out. Like I said, there are issues with that album. I think there are a lot of songs that are really great, but they have the longest fucking outros that make it impossible for me to want to add to any playlist because it'll be like 3 minutes of like a good song and then 2 minutes of moaning at the end. It's just like the weirdest shit. But when that album came out, it's long enough now that I can say I definitely have nostalgia for it. I have so many memories of driving around in the rain just listening to that album on repeat because I had nothing else to do. The world was shutting down. I wasn't going to school. I wasn't going to work. I was staying home all the time with nothing to do. And this brand new Childish Gambino album dropped that I was looking forward to for years. And I just would listen to it all the time. I became really connected with that album. I'm not gonna lie. When Atavista came out, I listened to it immediately, and while I do think that it's a better version, I guess. No, let me rephrase. I don't think it's a better version. I think that it's a more polished and updated version, and there are a lot of changes on there that I do appreciate, but I think I still connect with 31520 a little bit more. So let's just start off with the pros of Atavista. I think that it is more accessible for new listeners. It doesn't have any of the transitions really from the original version of the album. So instead of all these songs kind of like slowly leading into each other, they're all kind of standalone. I think you can listen to pretty much any of the songs on this album on its own without having to listen to whatever song came before it. Also, the mixing and mastering is so much better on this version of it. It honestly sounds like he re-recorded it. It's so crisp that I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, why? What happened on the OG version? I remember people were making that complaint about it when it came out, but I never really noticed it. I was kind of like, whatever, it sounds fine. But hearing this new version of Atavista, I'm like, yeah, no, it is. It sounds a lot better. And then also there are some like cool new verses on it. On the song not To Be Hunted. The song Sweet Thing now includes Summer Walker at the end. Originally it was Gambino. That's a cool new feature. I don't know necessarily if I needed it. Same with the Young Nudie feature on Littlefoot Bigfoot. I think these are both cool new additions to the album, but I wouldn't necessarily say that I needed them. I do have cons with this album, and it kind of holds me back from loving it as much as I want to. For example, even though I know the transitions on the OG version made the songs feel very dragged out, I feel like by taking those parts away, the cohesiveness of that original version is just lost, along with the concept that I thought was pretty apparent on the OG version. I don't know about anyone else, but when I was obsessed, I was obsessed with 31520. I was going to make a whole like YouTube documentary series essentially about that album when it came out. During the pandemic, I printed out literally every single lyric from that album, and I was highlighting it, making annotations and stuff, and I was studying that motherfucker. Honestly, I was trying to figure out what the album was about, and even though we don't really have any idea of what he was intending with this album, the concept that I took away from it was Donald Glover grieving from his father's recent passing. And I really liked that. I really liked that it felt kind of like a therapy session for him. And I really liked that. It made me feel a lot more connected with it, and it made the themes and the songs a lot more emotional. You don't get any of that on Atavista, in my opinion. A lot of this just feels like him trying to make standalone songs rather than kind of going with the original concept that I thought was happening on 3:15:20. Also, I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty upset by him removing the songs 0.00 and the full version of Why Go to the Party. I thought those were both pretty great songs, especially Why Go to the Party. That, again, kind of loops into what I was talking about when it felt like that original version of the album was about processing his grief over his father's death. Like, that song is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. The part when he says, "I call to a spirit, you may never hear it. It's hard for me to love myself without you here." Bro, what the fuck, dog? And that's just cut. He just cut that. It's not even on the album anymore. And it's kind of upsetting, to be honest, because, again, it feels like he's losing the plot a little bit with this re-release. It doesn't feel as focused as the original version was, surprisingly. And with 0.00, it's really a nothing song. It's just kind of saying we are over and over again over some ambient noise. But I feel like you don't really need to take that song away from the album. I think that still could have been the intro to this album that leads into Atavista, but he took it away, so it's kind of, what am I gonna do about it? And maybe I'm also a little bitter about him taking off 0.00 because that was the original opening song to my playlist Distractions, which is something that means a lot to me, and it's another moment of me forming this connection with those songs just for them to be taken away completely. What he also did when he released Atavista was he deleted the original version 3:15:20 off of streaming services. You can still find the full version on YouTube as like a full length 53-minute song, but I'm not ever gonna listen to that. And it also, it's like I had some songs like in a playlist, and I was like doing, like, it's just it ruins it. It ruins it. I know you can still listen to that original version, but it's dead to me. Honestly, at this point, it's fucking dead to me. Also, I just have like a weird nitpick. For someone who re-released an album so that the songs can stand alone better on their own, there's a weird noise at the beginning of Human Sacrifice that it sounds so out of place, but when you're listening to the album all the way through, it doesn't sound out of place. And I just think that's really funny. It's like, for someone who went so far into making sure the songs stand on their own, I don't know what happened with Human Sacrifice. Like, what the fuck? And then also, on that note, I'm glad that he finally added Human Sacrifice, but it's a little too late, in my opinion. I'm sorry. It's a little fucking too late. That song was hyped up 5 years ago. I wanted to hear a studio version of it for so long, and now that we finally get it, I'm like, this is cool, but it would have been a lot cooler 5 years ago. It's like, cool, yeah, strike while the iron's hot, fucking do it 5 years later. And then also, kind of going back to the whole concept thing, while I don't love the idea of including Feels Like Summer on the album, since it was a single that came out like a year before, I feel like thematically Feels Like Summer works a lot better on that album than Human Sacrifice does, honestly. At this point, if you wanted just to release Human Sacrifice, why not just make it a single? Like, it honestly, I see why he didn't include it on the original version, because, to be honest, it doesn't really fit with the rest of the themes on that album, in my opinion. Feels Like Summer, unfortunately, does fit a lot better with that feeling of dread and hopelessness that the album was trying to convey. And yeah, I mean, I think I'm just, I think unfortunately I am biased. I think I am biased when it comes to which version I prefer. I had 3:15:20 for so long. I had grown so used to that version of the album. It had gotten me, honestly, through some pretty dark times. I mean, I think it got a lot of people through dark times. It came out at the start of the pandemic, literally like the week that everything started shutting down is when that album came out. And I have so many memories associated with that version. And while it is cool to see him come around and release a new updated version for the people who couldn't get into it when the album originally came out, it honestly just kind of, it just feels, I don't know, it feels a little too late. For a re-release that aims to be the definitive version of an older album, it honestly really feels hindered in a lot of places. And while I appreciate the new songs and the proper mixing, honestly, part of me just wishes he just left this album alone and moved on to the next thing. I feel like the people that liked it were always going to like it, and the people who couldn't get into it still aren't really going to get into it. And now you just kind of have an album that just feels weird to me. I feel like there isn't really a perfect version of this album still. It feels like he cooked a little bit too much, in my opinion. And while there are positive things about this re-release, overall, I really do kind of just wish that he left it alone. So let me know what version of this album you guys prefer. Do you like 3:15:20? Do you like Atavista? What do you think? What do you think of this? Did you not like the album when it came out originally, but you like it more now, or vice versa? Did you love it when it originally came out, but you don't like this new version? Let me know in the comments. I'm very curious to see what other people are thinking about this. And yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please make sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, and that's it. I think that's it. I'll probably make a video when his new album comes out. Maybe I won't. Who knows? You'll have to subscribe to find out.